Hey guys, and welcome back. My name's Ohaple, and today we've got kind of a unique video for you. We are going to be talking about the hero's journey and how it applies to YouTube. I know this seems like kind of an obscure concept, but as I go through with examples, I think it'll make a lot of sense to you, and this can be something that's very beneficial to think about for those of you that are already into your YouTube career, or maybe those of you that are just considering starting YouTube. So make sure to stick around. I think you guys will enjoy it. Alright, so the hero's journey is something that's seen through almost every piece of major adventure literature. Harry Potter, Star Wars, all the old classics all have the hero's journey in them in one way or another. And many people have suggested applying this to kind of self-help concepts. And so this could be, you know, my marriage is in trouble. How can we apply the hero's journey to that? Or I'm starting a business. How can I apply the hero's journey to that? So I thought what I'd do is I would take that concept and apply the hero's journey with examples for you guys for YouTube, because I do feel like it's a beneficial exercise to understand where you're at in this cycle and how you can move yourself to the next step and continue on with your journey in YouTube. So as you see over on the side, the hero's journey is kind of a circle. You will go through it, go through it, go through it. Sometimes this means new challenges, whatever else. But the first part is always starting in the ordinary world. This is essentially, you can think of life before YouTube. Maybe you were just watching YouTube, you're just hanging out, you're just a normal person, whatever else. And that's where we're all going to start at. Eventually you get the call to adventure. This usually finds itself being kind of that itch that you get when you've been watching a lot of YouTube videos and you say, man, I sure have been enjoying watching Drifter or whoever, and I wonder if I could do this for myself. You know, it seems like he's getting a lot of benefits. Maybe he's making a job out of it. Maybe you just like the public recognition that they get. And so you get that itch and you kind of want to do it for yourself. Then comes the refusal of the call. This is where you might be making excuses for yourself. This is where you decide that you're not going to undertake the quest, in this case, starting YouTube. Oftentimes, the refusal of the call finds itself in excuses such as, I don't have time. You know, it costs too much to start out with buying capture equipment and cameras and microphones. There's lots of excuses that you probably will come up with to keep yourself from doing it. And that is the refusal of the call. Eventually what happens is you will get to the next step, which is called meeting the mentor. And this is where you're going to find a figure. In YouTube, this might only be a one-sided relationship where you're watching somebody, but traditionally it's somebody that you're working with and discussing your doubts about this adventure called YouTube. And so this might be, for example, for me, back in the day, this was the Untouchable Wolf. It was a very one-sided relationship at the time. I was watching his stuff and I was thinking, man, his quality is really great. It looks like he's really getting rewarded on this based on his successes up in the 20,000 subscriber range. And then I would watch Drifter and Woody's Gamertag, and they were kind of advice segments where they were giving YouTube advice. And together, the three of those guys really got me thinking over that refusal that I was doing and all my excuses and this and that, and gave you the confidence you need to tackle the problem and the adventure head on. So this is definitely something you could be discussing something with a YouTuber. Maybe you send me a message and I get back to you, or whoever your YouTube mentor will be. Maybe it's just you watching some tips or something like that. From there, you need to cross the first threshold. Now this will be probably uploading your first 5 videos or so. And it's called crossing the threshold because this is where you're really moving from pre-YouTube life to post-YouTube life, from the ordinary world to the special world as it is in the hero's journey. And this is where you can really start to recognize the differences between the two. And in some cases, this will be more significant than in others. But right away, you might say, wow, you know, all this time I've been sitting in front of my computer playing video games, and it's a lot different to play video games in private than it is to play video games with the intention of having a video out or streaming, because the way you play is different, your attitude's different. And many times people that do run gaming channels find that they've lost their motivation to play games because playing games has become a chore, part of their job, part of the YouTube cycle, rather than part of their enjoyment and their off time. So you'll begin to see this differentiation in crossing the first threshold. From here, you're going to start running into what are called tests, allies, and enemies. Now your tests are going to be things like figuring out your channel graphics. You're going to be struggling against your environment, if you will, struggling against figuring out how to do tags, figuring out your images, figuring out video editing, all of that. And along this path, you're going to create and find allies and enemies. Now, oftentimes allies and enemies are people that are already close to you or people that you meet, and you'll find a lot of enemies in your personal life. You're gonna have, if you're a high school student, you're gonna have friends that are like, what are you doing that for? Are you some kind of loser? They're gonna be saying all sorts of nasty stuff. Maybe it's your parents think it's a waste of time and they're gonna be naysaying it. Whatever it might be, maybe it's your girlfriend's like, you already play too much video games, I don't want you playing more. Those will be considered enemies in the hero's journey if considering YouTube. Then you'll find allies, which are going to be friends that you make, people that you already know maybe who are like, oh man, that's really cool, I'm happy for you, let me know if I can help you at all, I think YouTube's a cool thing. You'll find allies, enemies, and you'll have to overcome your personal tests with the YouTube environment. From there, you have the approach, which is where you're preparing for your kind of final destination, if you will. And this includes just kind of the grind, if you will. This is you busting out video after video after video, week after week after week, building your sub base, building up your views, maybe getting your partnership, all of that in order to get yourself where you would like to be. Now, many people have a life, I guess I should talk about this as well. Many people have a life cycle on YouTube where they're going to be on YouTube for 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years. But YouTube is certainly not something that anyone sees as a indefinite, forever type of thing. Everyone, at least that I know, realizes going into YouTube, maybe this is going to last me a year, maybe it'll last me 5 years, but probably, certainly not 10. And so this is a cycle that will come back on itself and you will return to ordinary life towards the end, which is part of the hero's journey. It is cyclical. Anyways, the approach is where you're kind of thinking about the climax that's going to be coming overall. You'll have the ordeal now. Now, the ordeal is the central conflict that's happening, often seen as the boss fight or whatever else. And this is really going to have to do with your relationships with other YouTubers or maybe your relationships with fans. Many people at some point, 6 months to a year in, are going to find themselves in some sort of crisis. It's going to be a personal thing where I just can't take the negative comments anymore, or some other YouTubers making videos about me behind my back, something like that. This is going to be your ordeal. This is your central part that's going to kind of decide who you are from here on forward. You can decide to take the low road, badmouth people, get into conflict, go over that, or you can maybe take a high road and learn how to conquer things with a little bit of class. Now, the next step is called seizing the sword, which is essentially the reward you get back from conquering that ordeal that we just talked about. So after you've dealt with, in whatever way you choose to, your kind of climactic point, maybe it's a YouTuber that you're having a fight with, maybe it's just the embodiment of your fans that are giving you really critical and negative comments at some point, you're going to have the reward that comes back. And now this is going to be on YouTube in two primary functions. First off will be monetary. Lots of people by a year in are making some money on YouTube. It's certainly something that's possible to do. The second one is personal and emotional, that many people just enjoy being in front of people and enjoy seeing their work be seen by others, getting a little bit of recognition, becoming a leader in a field. So your reward, your seizing of the sword, will be maybe economic, certainly personal. From there, you get your resurrection stage, which is where you need all of your growth to kind of come together in a way that you can kind of just bring it all into one moment of enlightenment, if you will. And this is really where you turn yourself internally from pre-YouTube life to post-YouTube life, and how you've changed as a person, because we all certainly will change on our time over YouTube. There's lots of lessons that you learn, both on micro scale and macro, that maybe you learn how to deal with people in a customer service role, something really minor like that. Maybe it means just generally you decide the type of person that you want to be. Do you want to be, somebody that's annoying others and taking the low road? Maybe you've decided that you want to take the high road. This is where you will have taken all of your lessons about video editing and dealing with your customers, your viewers, and taking all of your people skills and public speaking skills, everything you've learned, and kind of combine it in a single moment. And now this can often find itself in maybe signing your second network contract, maybe just sitting back and finally taking a breath and realizing how far you've come. It's not as significant as it is in other fields as it is in YouTube, but it is something that is there as well. That's your resurrection and where you really have changed internally as a person. Also, this could see something as many people will, like using Woody's gamertag as an example, be able to quit their job because they have seized the sword, which is the economic sword, and now their online life, their YouTube life, all of that are enough to get rid of their old life, shed their old life, quit their old job, and move forward with the new person that they've become. For many of us, though, that will not include quitting your job or quitting school. It will just include a personal internal change. Next up is the road back. And this is where you're kind of winding down your YouTube career. Like we said, most people are going to last somewhere between 6 months and 5 years probably. And this is where you kind of realize, all right, it's time to come back from YouTube land, being a star for a while, to come back to my real world with the real problems, with a real job, any of that. And for many people, this can be a hard concept that, you know, you've grown to love this and this has become part of your daily routine. And it's really hard to actually come back to where you were at the start and give up the whole YouTube thing. I know many YouTubers that are in the back of my mind that maybe they've hit their peak, and it is hard to come back to reality, maybe even harder than to build up into YouTube because you're so used to it and this is part of your new self. And lastly, you are going to return home to your ordinary world as it was, kind of to your pre-YouTube world, whether it's going to your job, having your same old friends, not doing online stuff like this anymore in the public light. But you will become kind of a master of these two worlds where you will have taken the gifts and the lessons that you learned through this YouTube journey, your public speaking skills, your customer service skills, and your video editing, everything else that you've ever learned, and you will be able to combine that and your new outlook on life, which may be minor, may be major, and combine that in and allow it to benefit kind of your ordinary world and your old life that you left before you started YouTube. And that kind of ends up the hero's journey and that cycle. And again, this can happen just because you can be at multiple hero's journeys at once. This can apply to many aspects of your life. But I think it's really interesting to watch it on YouTube because it really does apply. And oftentimes when you think of the hero's journey, this is a hyperbolic way to talk, that we think of the heroes. We think of Luke Skywalker and Harry Potter and all these crazy people. But the hero's journey can be much more internal and on a much more real scale. Like I said, getting a first job, getting a wife or a girlfriend, going through YouTube, doing much more practical things. So I thought this would be interesting to talk with you guys about, and it's something that I think all YouTubers at any stage in the cycle could learn to maybe think about a little bit and understand where they are in that cycle so that they can help proceed to the next cycle with some class, with some grace, and end off better off for it. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure to like, favorite, and subscribe if you do. And check out all my social media links down in the description. See you guys tomorrow.